Hello and welcome back to the Renewables podcast. Today we're going to continue our conversation with Jason Howlett from GivEnergy. Before we jump back to that chat, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who's shown such a lot of support to myself and Sam with this new venture around the Renewables podcast. If you haven't already, please do subscribe over on YouTube, give it a share on social media. We're seeing lots and lots of requests from brands and industry, people and consumers wanting to come on and have conversations with us, which is so nice, and we are very, very grateful for that. I think where we're going to pick up our chat with Jason is just delving into a discussion around Polar ESS, and very kindly, the good people of GivEnergy and Polar ESS have donated a system to us here at the Apprentice One-to-One training space to use and help people in their journeys becoming renewable installers. And it's just another reflection on that brand. And I want to emphasize my gratitude once again to GivEnergy for just that. But without waffling on too long at the start, let's get straight back to the chat with Sam and Jason at GivEnergy HQ. So welcome back to the Renewables podcast. Before we get into the conversation today, we just want to touch on some products from our sponsors at Proteus. And I'm going to start, Sam, with this SPD that they've got. Now, with these, you can mount them straight onto the buzz bar. You don't need to have an overcurrent protected device for them, which is super handy when we're limited for space. And we're trying to combine a smaller renewables board maybe with some EPS circuits. There's a lot of uses for these. They're absolutely fantastic. We've been using them for a good few months now, not that long out on the market. So yeah, absolutely fantastic that Proteus are looking after us as installers. And you've got another range of products over there.
I have, yeah. I've got the coloured Henley blocks, or 100 amp link blocks as some people call them. And gone are the days. I'm a bad contractor for using the black ones for so long, the Bakelite ones, because you try and knock one of these top knockouts out and it basically shatters the full thing. And I'm guilty enough to say that I didn't know these existed. So we started using these now, and they're absolutely fantastic. Solid. You've got the little blanks in here as well. So if you don't use one of the terminals, you can blank it off or just slide it out when you do need to use it. They're fantastic, and obviously they're all coloured as well, so that you know exactly the phase colour and the colour of the cable or the phase that's going into it. So yeah,
even the functional earth, or the Cranis collection as it is called, in pink. And they work with the 3mm Allen keys, which is consistent through the range of the mains tails isolators as well. So they've got us at heart, I think, as installers. You're not messing around with different screws and heads. Another fantastic range of equipment to tie in with the bi-directional RCBOs, which is obviously the leading product Proteus have got at the minute. Yeah. And they've had that for a long time, which is really helping us again as renewables installers. And that's one of the reasons that we're so happy to be working with Proteus on this show. But without any further ado, let's get back to the chat. One of the products that you guys are behind, and I don't think many people are aware of, to enable access at a lower price point, you just mentioned it there, is Polar. And that's a new thing that's come to market. I think that's one of your passion points, is it?
Yes,
the companies, and I think that's a really important step, because we are looking at getting more people into battery storage, and there is that initial cost barrier. There's no getting away from that. That's the big problem of getting millions of consumers into these kind of things. And Polar ESS is a good way of tackling that. Have you seen that take off in the way you'd hoped when it launched?
No, not as much as we'd like in reality. It's definitely gathering momentum. And we devised that product particularly for low cost markets like South Africa, where poverty is a massive thing. But energy poverty is a huge thing for me, and I think taking people out of energy poverty has to be a priority for any government. And so you see, keep giving people handouts, £300 winter fuel. I'm for, controversially, removing any universal benefits, the pensioners' winter fuel allowance and everything. Yes, now you can argue where that de minimis should be and whether it's set too low or anything. Have to look at that. But there are people who don't need handouts, but there are people who need more than handouts, and giving somebody £300 to help with their fuel payments, well, that only ends up with the energy company ultimately. Nothing changes. The end of that £300 burnt through, literally, is then that's gone. But if you transfer that into investing into infrastructure, and then really giving people in energy poverty who are really struggling to make those life decisions of, I always say renewable energy is for middle class. it is a middle class luxury. If you can't make the decision of, or making that decision of, how do I feed my family tonight? Can I afford to put my heating on and feed my family? Now it's getting into winter and everything. They're real challenging decisions that millions are facing. You touched on that, and there's different numbers banding around, even up to over like let's say up to about 5 million homes. But how do we help people out? And one of the things we've been lobbying hard for is like try and we almost got a trial running actually with the last government, and then they went and called an election, which was deeply frustrating. But we had a number of people, and we're working with a local charity called Beat the Cold. They're working in Stoke and Staffordshire, because in this area, apparently Staffordshire is the number one county for energy poverty, and Stoke is the number one city for energy poverty in the UK. So we're on our doorstep here, we've got people in genuine need. We've been trying to resurrect this, and actually, again, the frustrating bit of so many priorities, so many other things, we're actually going to fund a trial ourselves, a smaller scale trial than we wanted government to fund. So we're going to work with Beat the Cold charity to put batteries only in people who are really struggling with their energy bills, and utilising the Polar system, because we've devised it as cost effectively as possible. It's a much more cost effective solution to do. But let's give everybody, and part of our vision is empowering energy freedom for all, but that is both in terms of technically, from residential all the way through to utility scale systems, but from people of all classes and in all household types. And again, one of the big challenges I have with PASS is actually it's a middle class legislation. If you live in a detached house, semi-detached house, you've got plenty of space to put your battery on the outside. If you live in a flat, where do you put your battery to comply with PASS? If you live in a terraced house, where do you put it? Yeah. So you're alienating people at the lower end of housing types, potentially to technology. So what do we do about that? And so we've got some real challenges here, because we're almost legislation and guidance documents driving it away from people. So we've got to change that dynamic. We've got to make it accessible to everybody. So Polar was very much then introduced into the UK to try and do that, and try and help people with as low a cost solution we can. One of the barriers to its success is too cheap. So we've had a number of people going, well, that's too cheap. What? It's like, it can't be very good. It's too cheap. No, we've tried to do it as cheap as possible. We're not making profit. It's like, but people then become cynical. Yeah, it's too cheap. So we. I know it's like crazy, but it's like we've redesigned the topology. It's actually some of the topology in the new inverters is so good. We will be actually adopting it into the GivEnergy, because we've rethought it all the way through. And so it's bizarre that people become cynical when you create. So our mistake was probably making it too cheap. We probably needed to make more money on it, which goes against everything we're trying to do. But that is it. So it's very much at the heart of what we're trying to do, the ethos. And like I get so passionate about it that 95% of the energy I use at home is bought at the lowest rate, at 7 pence. That's right. And I'm running my house, a reasonable sized house, 2 electric vehicles, and so in summer my electricity bills are 2 or 3 quid, and in winter probably 40 or 50 quid. Who's paying for that? Ultimately, it's wrong. It's perverse that you get this whole on its head, that the people who can afford to pay the least pay the most, and the people who can afford to pay more can pay the least because they have access to technology. We have to change that. We have to make technology available to everybody. So I do get on my soapbox about this one. I get very passionate about it, and it's because it's wrong.
I think you're right. I mean, there's lots of people, I include myself in this, who could afford to pay more for energy, and it's looking at the RTI on your investment in all this kit and trying to get that money back as quick as you can. And maybe as a collective in this country, that's maybe not the best way of looking at it. And there's something we could do as consumers to allocate some of that, maybe on an annual basis. I don't mind doing this to help other people, where there's maybe a pot of money that's built up through some of the extra savings I've made to help. And the government of things, rather than, I suppose, feeding somebody for a day, you teach them how to fish and provide them with a fishing rod, and using a battery storage system at a low entry cost. It's maybe a better use of that money. I don't know if that's too harsh a way of putting it, but I think that's maybe something we could look at a society side of things, and definitely with manufacturers, lowering that price point is something that's critical. Having the nicer, you describe it at GivEnergy really well, the bells and whistles, is fantastic. There's lots of techie people who really want that, and I'm one of them. I would pay for that premium to have that feature. But there's other people who can do that, and they should not be excluded from this technology. And you're right that the PAS does do that. I raised that issue, especially this meter rule from doors and windows in terraced homes, and that discounts the issue with flats. I think that is something that needs to change urgently, to be fair. Because as installers, as you said, Sam, we want to comply with that. We want to follow this rule and guidance. The people saying this is a safety thing, we want to do it. But also, you're looking down the street, driving into here and just rows of terraced houses.
Absolutely.
And you couldn't install a battery storage system and comply with that document. Impossible.
And that's no.
Yeah, I think certainly from my view of it, because I've obviously given that a lot of thought, and we spoke obviously to Graham and IET and all that around it, and it's one of them that is definitely not perfect in my eyes. There's a lot of weird and wonderful things. The 1 meter rule thing from like a window or a vent and all this just seems so prohibitive. I think the thing that I am really passionate about around it is the fact that these homes, a lot of the homes that I've surveyed after the PAS documents come out, have one smoke alarm that had a battery in it 2 years ago. Like that they took it out when they burnt some toast. And every other, pretty much, I think there's only been 1 or 2 houses that I've surveyed that actually had kind of a grade 2 LD2 smoke alarm system in there. And I posted something on my social media that I got sent, and it was a cheap little Amazon light that had a lithium battery in. And overnight, it was on charge, and it burst into flames at 1 in the morning. And I kind of said, look, this is why. And the only thing that saved that home was the smoke detector in the kitchen, and it was an out-of-date one. It was a mains wired battery, but it was out of date. And the only reason that home only got up was the fact that all these smoke alarms were going off and they could come down. And a lot of people said, yeah, but that's just what happens, and PAS wouldn't necessarily have protected that. That's a little battery light. And I'm saying, well, if you've got a GivEnergy all-in-one sat, in your next to your kitchen, and the GivEnergy is working fine, it's doing its thing, but that little Amazon light sets fire to that house, and that fire reaches that battery, it's then like, how does that add to the fire that could potentially happen? It's not the battery's fault, the GivEnergy or the Solar Edge or whoever else it is. It's the fact that it's it's got.
I was at an iChemie event, and they started to talk about this same thing. It's like it can add to a fire. Well, everything in your house adds to a fire. Your sofa can add to a fire. Your plastic windows add to a fire. Your roof trusses add to the fire, and it's like all these things, and it's what level. In my house, in the old part of the house, I put an extension on, but the old part I've got a gas boiler still. It's probably. I don't think a heat pump will work. I will investigate it at some point. But you got that aspect. My gas boiler's in my loft. I've got a flame in my loft. No fire protection. And they go, well, that's okay. Well, I've got gas in my loft. I've got a fire source in my loft.
Yeah.
But that's okay. And then go, well, it's the weight. Well, I've also got a pressurized hot water cylinder that's probably, when it's always full, 200 kilograms. If that's in my loft, if that falls, that's even heavier than a battery. So all these things, it's kind of like, I think people are being overly negative. And as far as I'm aware, and you guys may know more, I don't think there's been an LFP battery fire caught in a loft at all. Now, I agree, there's many things in PAS that's great and guidance, but it's like, what if you can't do that? There's no caveat that goes there, and that's my biggest singular objection. It's like, that's best practice, but we recognise that is not always. So put a smoke alarm with that in the loft, I think absolutely perfect, and that fit it on concrete board or something like that to help mitigate some of that risk. There's things you can do, but to go, you always fit it to these standards. Well, I've now alienated many people. We've been working with social housing providers who go, they've stopped installing batteries in social housing because they can't comply with PAS. That's wrong.
I think there's engineering that can be done to try and kind of cover off some of the safety aspects. And Craig O'Neill, in his IET article about separate subject and outdoor consumer units, said it really well as an option of last resort. I think there should always be those options for us to try and engineer in a way that it is last resort. No one's going to choose to put something in the loft. The last place we want to go as an installer is in the loft. I wish people would stop having upstairs lights, just have lamps. They don't need to go in the loft at all then, doing their job. Nobody wants to be in those environments, least of all dragging inverters and batteries up there. So I think it's one of those where there has to be a way for us to still engineer and make those decisions, but it's
common sense.
It's evolution in the way that that's done, because equally, as you said, Sam, we don't want this stuff joining in with the fire. It is a lot of stored energy. Yeah. If it is to ignite, it could potentially put a first responder at risk. And I think you're dead right in this thing you've been doing on social recently, the whole smoke protection thing in UK homes. We really don't give that enough value more widely. And the discussion around renewables, going into these places and saying, no, it's great, you want this technology, but you've got a battery smoke alarm without its battery in down there, and it's the only one in your house. It's like, come on, guys.
It's smoke and heat, because heat, and a great BMS, and this is the difference with some of these batteries that you talk about with the sort of small devices. The BMS in the system is your first safety device. Yeah, it's isolating, and you go in the portal, you can look by cell level at what's going on in your battery. So again, that's what our system is doing. So if it's detecting a problem in the cell, it'll isolate that cell and close it down. So the inbuilt safety protections in our storage devices are so much higher than a system that's in scooter. And you see all these horror stories where a scooter burst into flames and by the back door and all these things. Yeah, they're completely different. Yeah, technology.
And the BMS is in a little DC power pack that's just soldered onto the plug and stuff.
Yeah, I do think the whole PAS thing is. I never really saw the PAS document as the final word on what these things have to do. I think it probably had its effect of starting that conversation, because there's kind of that thing, well, don't make it too soft because people just go, oh yeah, okay. Make it tough so that it actually drives this conversation. It's like all these documents, that's why the wine regulations change all the time. It tries to meet what happens. People moan about something, more information comes in. I think that is the development of PAS. The whole thing around not being able to fit it in social housing, not being able to fit it in terrace blocks, flats, and all the rest of it is too prohibitive. But I think it has sparked a really good conversation. Yeah. And I just want to try and I want to try and raise that baseline so that when companies that want to do a really good job are quoting, everyone is kind of sort of punting in the same direction. That's
there's so many things there, Sam. You know that better than anyone. Quoting against other people's standards. Yeah, you guys, operating at standards up here, other people operating at standards down there, and scaffolding is always one of those big things, isn't it? It's like you see some horror stories, installs still going on. And you go, so it's there's huge, that is again, it's another debate.
I'm maybe dreaming.
Inspirational.
Yeah, absolutely, we can. Yeah,
I agree. We create a debate, but and I've been pushing Desnes to go, what if you cannot comply, particularly with entry level housing things? There is no caveat that's in there. Go, this is best practice. We can all agree. Yeah, that's absolutely. But sometimes you can't achieve best practice. Therefore, what do you do? Yeah. And that isn't there, and that's one of the big things we're lobbying, just to make sure. We've got social housing providers trying to work with us on this, and it's like who have genuinely stopped installing batteries. That's an inconsequential effect of the guidance. They never set out to alienate people. I'm sure they didn't. They'd be real. Beat that out if they did, and that really is. But I don't think they ever set out to do that. But that is an inconsequential effect of it. So we go, right, okay, be quick. But then, again, now trying to get that changed is.
It must be a difficult one. We've got quite a wide-ranging conversation here, Jason, and I don't want to take up any more of your evening, but there is a couple more little topics I wanted to dive into.
One is for hours, aren't we? So one is
GivEducation. That was one of the primary things that first brought me to GivEnergy as a brand for us to install. I'll be honest, when we entered the solar industry, I was looking very fresh eyes. Didn't have the experience you had, Sam, of knowing what were reputable brands and what weren't. So you start looking around, and I saw GivEducation, and that kind of drew me to you guys. So I'll explain a little bit about what that is for maybe people who aren't aware.
Yeah, we're really, really passionate about the community and what we bring into the area we are. So, many businesses like what they take the profits, take their blood. We try and do so much. We try and be good corporate citizens on multiple levels. GivEducation was really the brainchild of the founder. And again, without wishing to embarrass him, growing up in Hull, he said at 11, if it wasn't for a maths teacher who discovered him and the genius that he had, he would either be dead or in prison, because that's where his peer group typically ended up. Growing up in Hull is, exactly. I look at you. Yeah, exactly. But you know what I'm saying? He was on a wrong path because school wasn't challenging him and everything else. He was, and is still a genius in many ways. pain in the ass in others, but that's a different story. But that challenge and what schools. So it was a maths teacher took under her wing, developed his talents and really there and set him on a different path. And so Give Education was very much around state education caters for maybe the middle 60%. It kind of doesn't really, and with teaching assistants it tries to, but trying to get the people who are struggling academically, down there, and then the gifted children, it probably doesn't challenge enough. So Give Education was a concept that we're working with Keele University just down the road here. So local university, it's a 3-year program. We're probably about halfway through it, which is developing support for teachers to deliver better learning outcomes for each and individual student. So, and that may be English is not their first language. They may be more kinesthetic in their learning. They may be more audible. What is their learning style? What is their interest? So if conventional teaching doesn't always reach every child, how do you help support that? So if you're interested in football or it's in something else, try and relate a physics lesson into football. The energy to kick a ball. It becomes a bit more relatable, a bit more exciting. And so checking and balancing. So we've been working now with a number of local schools, and the whole ethos of Give Education is to give that free. So we're spending about £500,000 per year on that, entirely our funding. There is no government support on that at all. We're not trying to get it, but again, we're so passionate about it, we're doing it irrespective. So I've got a team outside, they're on this floor here, team of about 6 people employed on Give Education, working now with the schools, getting some tremendous feedback on this, and the whole plan is that we use the technology and what we're doing to develop business learning, and we've launched one of our first business courses, and the plan is that will fund and help fund the education and again, that ethos of, certainly with big corporates, you're going, right, if you enroll on a course with Give Education, it's helping fund education to children. And that whole CSR thing with big corporates, again, it aligns to there's a greater good and a greater purpose. But the whole Give Education piece is not then just about that. We've expanded that into a number of other avenues. And we work with a charity called Primary Engineer. So we're taking STEM into primary schools. We did 10 last year, we're doing 15 this year. So that's all local schools in this area, teaching the teachers to deliver STEM and then giving them kits so they can build projects in the schools. So that's at sort of 7-8-year-old children. The really exciting thing there, and again, this comes back into, you talk about equality, and you get into gender equality and racial equality and everything else. But there's also social equality and everything, and trying to lift people. Like I said, there's a number of areas in this location that are in poverty. But gender diversity is quite interesting, because at that age, you get as many girls interested in STEM and building these and doing these projects as usually boys. And one of the big aspects, and I know you've talked about this before, Mark, is in all that, and encouraging apprenticeships and getting people into our industry. So we're working through that level. We did a 2-day summer camp with Keele University again, where we had 86 students, first generation, teaching them to encourage them to go to and think about university, to develop down that route. So we sponsored this 2-day camp overnight, 2 days at university. About 20% thought university was for them before they arrived. 86% thought it was for them after the 2-day event, because it opened their eyes. But then also working with Newcastle and Stafford College Group. I always have to think about NCSG. SCG. With the Institute of Technology, which is thinking about then more practical and thinking about the industry and raising standards or creating qualifications through the Institute of Technology that the college group is working on. That with this sort of electronics, electrical skills, that people understand how renewable products work and install and understand how to install them, and creating those skills that are really required for our industry. So getting the college to deliver students that will be great for the industry. And so there's so many angles that we've spun this out, and we've got apprentices here, we've got graduates here, and working on a number of areas. And I know that's something you're really passionate about, Mark, in particular, and I am. I've always tried to develop that talent and think about what we bring into this community. Historically, Stoke and Staffordshire has always been potteries and mining. Those industries have gone. There's still some potteries, some niche pottery manufacturers, but that's not what it was. What's left for Stoke and this area? We've got to create new jobs, new new talents and aspirations for people to want to work here and stay in this area, because if you're going to raise the standards in the community, you do that. And quite often we'll get approached by sporting clubs and even the local ones, and I go, no, we don't sponsor sport, we don't sponsor a football team. It's not who we are. It's not our ethos. We're not there for getting our name and brand. We're there to make a difference. So I'd much rather sponsor kids and their futures and develop something than have my name on a stadium or on a shirt. Again, it's about what you do for that community and bring into it.
There's a lot of what I'd call integrity and ethics in the GivEnergy brand. Just from speaking to you the last hour or two, Jason, that's come over really strongly as well, that you are actually really believing in that. It's not something you're just saying for effect. You're doing it. You do want to have that ethics, the responsibility, I guess, if you like. You've been a big UK growing emerging company, wanting to support your local community and education as well. And, fair play to everybody in GivEnergy, including the founder you've referenced a few times. Is that Carl, by the way?
No, God, don't swear. He's also called Jason, but he has zero. Yeah, there's two, which actually he's not on social media. He doesn't do anything, and on there. So he's it gets quite confusing when they say two Jasons, like there. So we are very, very poles apart, but we work incredibly well together. He's incredible. You could have the most geeky tech conversation with him. Be very, very different. You wouldn't have a business conversation about what will send these things with him because he's not interested. He'd much rather be with the R&D people and building something, creating something new. So most of the great ideas in the tech and what we're working on right now, again, the next iterations, he's front and centre in that. That's his passion. So he can't do it.
From him then, basically, as what I'm alluding to, is the ethics, integrity of the brand. Is that kind of from him and the rest of the team?
Yeah, I've just built on it because it's always been something close to my heart. Wherever I've been supporting engineering development trusts, year and industry students, I've always had that. And that's what brought us together. We have shared values. I've come from a background where I relied on the state, free school meals, free school uniforms. He did. We've both come from areas where the state has supported us. We're not silver spoon, and I don't think many people in our industry are. We are normal working class people, typically, aren't we? I was having to work on a fruit and veg stall at 11 so I got some money. Nothing was given to me. I've had to earn it and I've had to work for it. So we all have that mentality over we need to bring people with us, give people opportunity. And so we are really passionate about doing the right thing. We don't actually have a corporate policy over this. I did a piece on it some time ago. We don't have a CSR policy and all this sort of stuff. We just try and do the right thing. It's like when we bought this building, the first thing we did, change the lights out for LEDs, put solar on the roof and put a battery downstairs. There's no payback on that. It's like, we've got the EV chargers out, our EV chargers out there. We have a fleet of EVs because it's just the right thing. We built the factory on Chemical Lane. We couldn't get the grid connection, so we're off grid. Again, renewables across there and everything. So it's just about trying to do the right thing. There is no payback models or anything, and everything we try and do is it the right thing? We sponsor some local awards in the area, but that are linked to what we do. We don't sponsor anything. So locally, there's some business awards. So we sponsor the Green Business of the Year, because that's who we are. We're not going to sponsor something else. There's some local heroes awards. I've just been doing some judging a few weeks back, and which is like police, charity workers, and all this. Great people who are doing tremendous things in the community. We sponsor the Teacher of the Year, the Educator of the Year, because it links to who we are. So everything we try and do and support links to our three things. We're only really interested in supporting education, the industry. We're passionate about supporting the industry, and there's things that we're trying to do, and hopefully will become public knowledge in a few weeks' time about the industry and what we're trying to do there, and then our community. That's who we are. We're very simple, and if it doesn't meet a couple of those criteria, we're not interested in getting involved. It is all about purpose. We are truly a purpose-led business. We try and just do the right thing across all the things we've talked about. Supporting young people and encouraging young people at all levels, working with the universities and the colleges and that space. The cybersecurity, doing the right thing by people, by customers, making it easy for them, making it accessible to them, working with Beat the Cold as a charity and trying to end energy poverty. We see ourselves as having a real moral obligation to try. It's not about government. You can't just rely on governments. You're all trying to do your own bits in different ways. You do huge amounts with apprentices. You're passionate about that. That's not a government doing. That's you. That's you want to do it, isn't it, Mark? That's something that's really close to your heart. These are all close to our heart about, really just doing the right thing.
Fair play to you, and that's coming across as really genuine. I know there's a lot of corporate entities out there who say the right thing. Often when you peel behind the layers, they're not doing it, and you're clearly doing that. So, full credit to you. I've got one more thing I wanted to discuss before we end our little chat. Is there anything else you?
I'm just soaking all this in. It's yeah, I know. Obviously you have a lot more to do with GivEnergy than myself at the minute. And yeah, and so I'm learning lots, and I'm kind of recording all this myself.
The core products, and I know there's some cool innovation coming, and in the market I operate, particularly the domestic one, I know you've got innovation at commercial level as well, which is super exciting. But at the recent solar and storage, you went over and looked at the new all-in-one, and George banned me from recording any content and talking about it because I think he wants the exclusive of that for you guys with GivEnergy. But that's an exciting change that you've got. It was a bit mean. I was really upset about it, but I can fully understand it. And George is the star of the show, by the way, GivEnergy. Play to him, but no, that's a really exciting shift in the product to be a true all-in-one. Are you able to share any detail on that?
Yeah, that again, that next iteration, which is the hybrid, with the all-in-one variant, so that the hybrid option that sits within there, and again, much higher outputs. We launched the design concept. If it's anything like the original all-in-one, that concept that was there would look slightly different and be technically different. We developed it, I think, down at our facility on Chemical Lane. I think there's still in the cupboard about 3 prototypes of what the original all-in-one looked like, and I think one of those was on show. So, the final variant, we haven't nailed the spec, but I think it's going to be a really exciting new product. But I think what most people like is, particularly new build, is not putting the string inverter with the with the all-in-one as an AC couple. It was very much designed for a retrofit, and adding that, and that was like this. Why it's the first product we launched in Australia was the all-in-one, because there's so many homes with solar. But we also recognise, and there's a huge demand for higher output, higher energy storage products. So again, most homes, it's always that balance in here, because people talk about, we can do 11 kilowatts and discharge, but it's dead then within just over an hour. So do you really need 11? When do you ever really need 11? Because you're going to burn through that storage capacity very, very quickly. So we did, the existing all-in-one at 6 kilowatts. But again, it is there, and it is a feature, so we will have a higher output for those that want it. But yeah, it's just the next iteration, the constant evolution of the product. So I think I'm really excited about it. I think we've had such positive feedback about it. I think the great thing is the guys designing it came up with the right idea. Yeah. So
got the right people.
Yeah,
a lot of consumers waiting on that at the minute, and I'm getting all-in-one envy because I now want one as well. But it's making life easy for us as installers, because you would have to fit a separate string inverter, and now we don't need to. And I think the whole.
We've launched a new string inverter as well, which you probably saw.
Yes, there's all those things coming, which is helpful for us as installers. And I'm really grateful for that, to be able to offer that to our customers. You're helping us grow our business essentially by innovating these things. So it's not just in terms of your bottom line and sales, you're actually helping your installer base out there. But it's one of those, I think, you mentioned about the specs, and I think it's the same with mobile phones and with laptops. No one really uses those things to their maximum rating. Everyone wants it. It's like, I want that fast processor and that extra bit. I'm never going to use it, but it's just what you want. And I think that's the way it's going in the world of solar systems as well. Whether we'll grow out of that at some stage, I think.
Constant features, isn't it? Features those thing, and feature rich, and you're wanting the best of this and the best of that. But how do you, again, I think you've talked about this. Sorry, I'm going to just go off with a little bit of a tangent. How do you compare that in a true like for like? And we've had this with warranties, and I think you've covered this in a previous one. One person's warranty is not another. It's like, it's 15-year warranty, 2,000 cycles. It's like, read the small print, or it's, we have unlimited cycles in there, and it's, what is a cycle? Well, a cycle is 5 minutes, and it's full cycle equivalents. Again, there's huge disparages between a standard or what's declared, even in a feature. So again, you've got to go so much detail that you do, because the headline and then the reality is you'll burn through that warranty condition within 3-4 years. It's gone. Forget the 15-year. If you use it anything like you should be using it, particularly now with more cycles on grid services and all these other things, that cycle life has gone. So how do you judge that because it's like I say, the features and benefits. So they're not the headlines, and what sits beneath that is again really really difficult.
Yeah, I think as well, people are, and I'm talking more about customers here, they are seeing it as an ecosystem as well now. They're seeing the battery as kind of like the head of the system, and then you've got like the EV charger and the diverters and all these smart switches and all these other things. And I think that's where I've seen the industry go down a lot over the last year or two, is kind of every battery company or every solar company has now got an EV charger or a diverter or this, that, and the other. And I think that is, as well as like the warranty and the outputs and everything else, is that customers are looking at, okay, well, I'm thinking of an EV. Does this, do GivEnergy have an EV charger that's going to fit? And if that answers a yes, it's another tick in that box, because people can't afford necessarily to do all this at once, but they want to know that when they can be in a position to do it, or they do get an EV, or they do get a heat pump, or they do get this, that, and the other, they're able to expand on that system. And walking around solar storage, you could just see that throughout all these different products.
Oh, massively, and making sure it all works together in one ecosystem. So we've worked under NDA with a number of heat pump manufacturers to integrate their technology into ours. We can integrate wind pumps into ours. So the whole ecosystem has been built to integrate third-party technology as well as our own. So because again, that's what you don't want, competing system technologies, and Mark touched on it at the beginning. The home energy management system, the ecosystem that we have, the portal, the app was written and developed and continues to be developed to integrate as much as possible, because it is just that we're going to get, whether consumers want it or not, or recognize they even need it now, as the iterations and journeys continue over the next few years, you're going to see that real need for something that can sit there. So my guys are working on something in that space, really, again, here and developed here, because it's a smart tech. So that's one of the things we will manufacture here, because it's so important into security and everything else, because the more you integrate and the more you connect things together, again, the cybersecurity risk becomes even higher.
Yeah.
It's all integrated. It's like, it's
the way, you're dead right, it's the way it's going, that integration and the whole security aspect of it. It's all really interesting. I've loved the entire chat with you, Jason, that we've just had, and I'd love to do something again with you guys in a future episode. Is there anything else you want to add, and then you can take us out on it?
I just really, really valued this time that you've given up for us. So thank you. We always start these podcasts with for about just under an hour, something like that, and it always seems to run over. But that's a sign of a great conversation, is that we're finding out lots of stuff. The conversation's flowing, and we're all hopefully getting a lot of value, and hopefully you've got a lot of value out of this conversation. So if you have, then like, subscribe, share it around, and we'd really value that. And thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much, Jason, for all of your time. And thank you very much, Mark, for setting this one up. Thanks very much. So we'll see you on the next Renewables podcast. Thanks very much.